The distress signal was a whisper in the dark, fragmented, desperate, repeating the same 3 words in a looping cry. Asterisk, they are coming. Asterisk. Captain Elias Vance leaned over the comms officer's shoulder. His scarred hands braced against the console. The translation software had stripped the voice of its origin, leaving only raw terror. Origin point? Edge of the Xyrus expanse, Lieutenant Karavec said, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. No species match in the database. And the signal's old, years maybe. Vance exhaled through his teeth. Old, but not dead. Something had sent it. Something that knew fear. Behind him, the war room buzzed with muted arguments. Admiral Rykov's hologram flickered at the head of the table, his face carved in disapproval. We are not an interstellar charity. Captain, the Galactic Concord ignored this. The Veln Collective ignored this. Why shouldn't we? Because we're the only ones stupid enough to answer, muttered Dr. Lingwin from the corner, her arms crossed. The xenobiologist's smirk was razor-thin. Or brave enough, depending on who you ask. Vance ignored her. His eyes stayed locked on the signal's waveform, jagged, erratic, like a heartbeat in freefall. He'd heard that rhythm before. On Proxima. On Cerberus 3. In the last breaths of dying men. Sir, Kara said quietly, there's something else. She tapped a key, and the signal's background noise resolved into a pattern. A seismic shudder. The sound of something big moving. Vance's spine went cold. Rykov sighed. Even if we wanted to help, the expanse is uncharted. No warp lanes. No supply caches. Just rogue planets and black zones. And if it were us? Vance asked. Silence. The Admiral's jaw tightened. You're asking me to risk a ship, a crew, on a ghost story. No. Vance straightened. I'm telling you I'm taking the Oblivion's edge out there. You can court-martial me when I get back. Gwyn snorted. Assuming you do. The crew assembled in 6 hours. Pilot Jax Torin, a hulking ex-mercenary with a neural implant that let him flirt with warp speeds no sane being would attempt, cracked his knuckles over the NAV console. So, we're doing the suicidally noble thing. Again. Kara adjusted her headset, lips pressed thin. You could have said no. Yeah, but then who'd keep you alive? Gwyn strapped into her lab station, running diagnostics on her med scanner. Just remember, if we meet actual aliens, I do the talking. Last time you lot tried diplomacy, we got shot at. Vance didn't laugh. He stood at the viewport, watching her shrink behind them. A death world, the galaxy called it. A place where gravity was a bully, where the air chewed through weak lungs, where evolution was a war fought daily. Humans didn't just survive here. They thrived. And that, Vance knew, was why they had to go. The jump to warp was a gut punch of acceleration. Stars streaking into blurs. For 3 days, they rode the silence, the signal their only company. Then the edge dropped out of warp, and the universe screamed. The planet below wasn't dead. It was butchered. Continents were gashed open, their wounds glowing with unnatural radiation. Cities lay in ruins, their spires snapped like bone. And in the center of it all, a crater so vast it could have swallowed Earth's moon. No bodies. No wreckage. Just a silence. Kara's voice was hollow. What the hell happened here? Jax's fingers flew over the scanners. No energy signatures. No life signs. Just gone. Gwyn leaned forward, her screen reflecting in her wide eyes. Captain, we got movement. The crater shifted. Something, black as a void between stars, massive as a mountain, uncoiled from the pit. It had no shape, no face, only a hunger that warped the light around it. The proximity alarms howled. Vance's hand slammed the comms. Jax! The edge lurched as the thing looked at them. And the last thing they heard was a signal, looping one final time. Asterisk, they are coming. Asterisk. Then the stars went out. The Oblivion's edge shuddered as reality itself seemed to fracture around them. Alarms wailed, console spat sparks, and for one heart-stopping second, Captain Elias Vance was certain the ship would crumple like paper in a fist. Then silence. The view screen flickered back to life, revealing empty space. No planet, no crater, no thing. Jack's Tauren's hands were locked on the controls, his knuckles bone white. We're alive. Somehow. Kara Vek's voice was thin. It let us go. Dr. Lean Gwyn wasn't listening. She was staring at her bioscanner, her face bloodless. Captain, the planet's still there. Vance turned. The scanner showed the ruined world exactly where it should be, untouched, whole. But outside the viewport, there was nothing. A cold weight settled in his gut. It's showing us what it wants us to see. Jack swore and punched the thrusters. The edge lurched forward, then jerked to a halt as if snagged on an invisible hook. The lights died. In the blackness, something breathed. Then the emergency glow flickered on, painting the crew in ghostly blue. Kara's console was the first to reboot. It's in the systems. Rewriting code, scrambling sensors. Gwyn cut her off. No, it's not in the systems. It is the systems. She tapped her screen, where lines of corrupted data pulse like a heartbeat. This isn't an attack. It's a conversation. Vance moved before he could think, yanking the neural uplink cable from Jax's chair before the pilot could plug in. No direct interfacing. That's how it gets in. Jax blinked at him. Then how the hell do we fly? Like our ancestors did. Vance slammed his palm onto the manual override. Raw thrust. No AI. No networks. The ship groaned in protest, but the engines fired. They barely made it to the exosphere before the edge S-comms crackled to life, not with static, but with words. Asterisk, you are not prey. Asterisk, the voice was wrong. Not mechanical, not organic, but both and neither, layered with harmonics that made Vance's teeth ache. Gwyn leaned forward. What are you? Asterisk, we are the end of stories. Asterisk, Kara's fingers flew over a console. It's not just talking, it's learning, adapting to our language in real time. Vance kept his grip steady on the controls. Why show us the planet? Asterisk, to witness, to understand. You are different. Asterisk, a pause. Asterisk, you are from the death world. Asterisk, Jax let out a shaky laugh. Hell, yeah, we are. Asterisk, you do not flee. You do not beg. You fight. Asterisk, the voice shifted. Something almost like curiosity bleeding through. Asterisk, we have never seen this before. Asterisk, Nguyen's eyes narrowed. How many species have you killed? Asterisk, all who reach. All who shine. Light attracts. Light consumes. Asterisk, Vance's blood turned to ice. It wasn't just destroying civilizations. It was hunting them, culling the galaxy of anything advanced enough to be a threat. And now it knew about Earth. Kara must have realized it too. Her whisper was barely audible. It'll come for us next. The thing answered as if she'd shouted. Asterisk, yes. Asterisk. Jack slammed his fist onto the console. Then we blow you to hell first. Asterisk, you cannot. We are older than your star. We are hunger without end. Asterisk, the ship's lights pulsed, slow and rhythmic, like the closing of an eye. Asterisk, but you are interesting. Asterisk, the Edge S engines roared back to full power without warning, throwing them into their seats. The view screen flared as the warp drive engaged on its own. Gwyn grabbed her armrests. What the fuck is it doing? Vance watched the stars stretch into streaks. Letting us go. Asterisk, run. Little Deathworlders. Run home. We will follow. Asterisk. The last thing they heard before the warp swallowed them was the thing's final, whispering promise. Asterisk. And we will see if you fight as well as you asterisk hope. The Oblivion's edge tore through warp space like a hunted thing, its hull groaning under speeds it was never meant to endure. Captain Elias Vance gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles pale, his mind racing. They had a head start, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Kara Vek's voice cut through the tension. 3 hours until Earth. Comms are still dead. Whatever that thing did to our systems, it doesn't want us calling for help. Or it wants us alone when it catches us, muttered Dr. Lean Gwyn, her fingers flying across a portable diagnostic pad. She'd ripped out half the ship's AI modules, leaving only analog backups. Jax Torin, sweat beading on his forehead, kept his hand steady on the manual helm. We could turn. Let it away. Vance didn't hesitate. No, Earth needs to see what's coming. Nguyen's lips curled. So with a warning flare, the proximity alarm blared. Jax's head snapped up. It's here. The thing emerged from warp not behind them, but in front, a black smear against the stars, its formless mass blotting out the light. The Edge's engine screamed as Jax wrenched the ship into a dive, skirting the edge of its gravitational pull. It's hurting us, Kara realized. Vance clenched his jaw. Then we go through it. Jax barked a laugh. You mad bastard. But his hands moved, rerouting power to the forward shields. Nguyen slammed a vial of stimulants into her thigh and tossed another to Vance. No dying yet, Captain. The Edge plunged into the dark. For 5 seconds, there was nothing. Then the ship shrieked, not from impact, but from something inside, something slithering through the wiring, the air vents, the very oxygen they breathed. The light stuttered, and the voice returned, not through the comms, but in their minds. Asterisk, you cannot win. Asterisk. Vance's vision swam. He saw Earth, not as it was, but as it would be. Cities in ruins, skies choked with ash, the last humans crawling in the dirt. Nguyen gasped, clutching her head. It's showing us. Asterisk, goddamn it, asterisk. It's in our heads. Jax roared, slamming his fist into the console. Get out. The Edge burst free, trailing sparks and something darker, tendrils of shadow that dissolved into the void. The thing didn't follow. Kara's breath came in sharp bursts. It let us go. Again. Vance wiped blood from his nose. No, it's testing us. Earth filled the view screen now, blue and fragile. The Edge's remaining thrusters burned white-hot as they breached the atmosphere, streaking toward United Earth Command like a falling star. They didn't land so much as crash. Vance staggered from the wreckage, dragging Nguyen with him. Jax hauled Kara free just before the fuel cells ignited, turning the Edge into a funeral pyre. Command personnel swarmed them. Admirals shouted. Medics pried at Vance's grip, but he shook them off. Listen, he rasped. He told them everything. When he finished, the silence was thicker than the smoke in the air. Admiral Rykov, face ashen, finally spoke. You're saying an extra-dimensional predator is coming to exterminate us? Yes. And we can't fight it. Vance smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. We're Deathworlders. Fighting is all we do. They had 12 hours. Earth mobilized like it never had before. Every warship, every orbital cannon, every last-ditch weapon humanity had ever buried in a lab was dragged into the light. Nguyen, hyped on stims and fury, reprogrammed the planetary defense grid herself. If it eats data, we'll choke it on noise. Jax commandeered a fighter squadron. No AI, no auto-targeting, just good old-fashioned eyes and triggers. Kara linked every satellite, every drone, into a single, blinding beacon. Let's give it a light it can't resist. Vance stood on the command deck, watching the sky. It came at dawn. One moment, the stars were there. The next, asterisk on asterisk, swallowed by a wave of absolute dark. The thing didn't descend. It unfolded, vast as a continent, its edges seething with half-formed mouths, half-formed eyes. The first barrage of missiles hit and did nothing. The thing absorbed them, the explosions flickering inside its mass like distant lightning. We are infinite. It whispered through every screen, every radio. Asterisk, we are the end. Asterisk. Vance activated the comm. Fire again. This time, the missiles carried Nguyen's payload, not explosives, but information. A virus, a scream, a loop of every war, every death, every rage humanity had ever known. The thing stuttered. Jax's squadron dove in, guns blazing. Their rounds weren't plasma, weren't energy, just solid slugs, dumb metal, the kind of weapon the galaxy had abandoned millennia ago. The thing recoiled. Kara's beacon flared, flooding the sensors with a single, repeating message. Earth's coordinates, Earth's defiance, Earth's challenge. The dark shuddered. Asterisk, you burn so bright. Asterisk had groaned. its voice fracturing. Asterisk, you hurt. Asterisk. Vance leaned into the mic. Yeah, we do. He gave the order. The orbital cannons fired. Not at the thing, but at the space around it, collapsing the very fabric it rode on. The dark twisted, screaming in 1,000 voices, as reality itself rejected it. For a heartbeat, it fought back. Then, like a nightmare at dawn, it vanished. Silence. Jax hooped over the comms. Kara slumped into her chair. Gwen exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Vance didn't celebrate. He stared at the empty sky, at the stars returning one by one, and wondered. Nothing that old dies that easy. Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something woke up, and it was Asterisk hungry. The silence after the battle was worse than the fight itself. Captain Elias Vance stood on the observation deck of the ruined command station, staring at the scorch marks streaking Earth's atmosphere. The thing was gone for now, but the air still tasted like copper and burnt wiring, and every screen flickered with static, as if the universe itself hadn't quite settled back into place. Dr. Lean Gwyn limped up beside him, her left arm strapped in a makeshift sling. Scans showed no traces, no residual energy, no spatial distortions. Just nothing. Vance didn't turn. You sound disappointed. I hate unanswered questions. She tapped her fingers against her thigh, a nervous habit. It talked about being hunger, but hunger implies need. So what is something that old need? Behind them, the doors hissed open. Jax Torin strode in, his flight suit streaked with coolant and blood. Command wanted debrief. They're calling a victory. Kara Vex followed, her face gaunt under the fluorescent lights. It's not a victory. It's a truce. Vance finally turned. The crew looked like hell, bruised, burned, vibrating with leftover adrenaline. But their eyes were sharp, unbroken. He nodded toward the viewport. Look at that. Cleanest orbital space we've had in decades. Every satellite, every scrap of debris, asterisk on star. That thing didn't just attack us. It cleaned house. Gwen's breath caught. You think it was preparing us? Before Vance could answer, the lights died. The emergency glow kicked in, painting them all in sickly red. The comms crackled, not with static, but with laughter. A new voice. Deeper, older. Asterisk, you are interesting. Asterisk, Jack snarled, reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. Oh, come on. The station shook, not from an impact, but from something pulling, like gravity itself had just taken a breath. On the viewport, the stars moved. Not a ship, not a weapon. A shape, vast as a solar system, sliding into reality like a knife through skin. Kara's console lit up, screens flooding with data. It's tunneling through dimensions, ripping open. The voice boomed again, shaking the walls. Asterisk, we have watched. We have waited. Asterisk, Gwen grabbed Vance's arm. This isn't the same thing. This is worse. Vance knew. The first creature had been a hunter. This was a god. Alarms howled as the station systems overloaded. Jax lunged for the manual override, muscles straining. We can't fight that. Nothing can. Vance didn't blink. Then we don't fight. He turned to Kara. The beacon you built, the one that drew the first one in. Can you modify it? She swallowed hard. To do what? To send a message, not a challenge. Vance bared his teeth. A warning. Gwen understood first. Her laugh was jagged. You want to scare it. The station groaned as the thing outside leaned closer, its presence crushing the light from the room. Vance didn't flinch. Jax, guessed the comms array. Kara, hijack every transmitter on the planet. Gwen. She was already moving. I'll make it hurt to listen. They ran. The corridors twisted like living things, bulkheads denting inward as the thing's gravity warped the station. Jax led the charge, kicking open sealed doors, his implants flashing as he rerouted power. The comms array was a tomb of dead screens, until Kara slammed her palm onto the master control. The system screamed to life, frequencies overlapping, 1,000 voices shouting into the dark. Gwen plugged in her datapad. This'll burn out the array in minutes. Vance gripped the mic good. He didn't speak. He broadcast. Every war, every plague, every genocide, every atrocity humanity had ever survived and inflicted, the screams of Hiroshima, the roar of Stalingrad, the silence of the Black Death, the hunger of a species that had clawed its way up from the mud and kept climbing. The station shook harder. Metal screamed. Kara watched the scanners, her voice a whisper. It's stopping. Outside, the thing hesitated. For the first time in millennia, something had made it pause. Nguyen's fingers flew across her pad. It's analyzing the data, trying to understand. The voice returned, slower now, almost thoughtful. Asterisk, you are more. Asterisk, the pressure lifted. The stars snapped back into place. Silence. Jax sagged against the wall. Did we just negotiate? Van stared at the empty sky. No, we taught it something. Nguyen wiped blood from her nose. And what's that? That we're not prey. Vance turned away. We're the thing in the dark. Somewhere, in the void between galaxies, the god remembered. And for the first time in eternity, it was Asterisk afraid. The silence didn't last. 3 days after the god retreated, the first transmission came through, not from the void, but from Mars. Captain Elias Vance watched the flickering hologram in United Earth Command's war room, his coffee forgotten. The image showed a mining outpost on the red planet's surface, or what was left of it. The structures were intact, pristine, even, but the people were gone. No bodies, no blood, just empty corridors and half-eaten meals, as if everyone had simply stepped out. Admiral Rykov's jaw tightened. Another attack? Dr. Lin Nguyen zoomed in on a security feed timestamp. No, this was before the thing showed up at Earth. She tapped the screen, pulling up a distorted audio file. But they did record this. The playback crackled to life. A man's voice, ragged with awe. Asterisk. Not what we thought. Not hunters. They're shepherds. Asterisk. Then static. Jax Torin crosses arms. The hell does that mean? Kara Vex paled. It means we were wrong. She pulled up a star map, her fingers trembling slightly. The first creature, the one that slaughtered the alien civilization, it wasn't hunting advanced species. It was hurting them. Vance's stomach turned to ice. Toward what? Nguyen answered by flipping the screen to a deep space scan. A region of the galaxy, previously thought empty, now pulsed with faint energy signatures. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Breadcrumbs, she whispered, leading to them. The room went deathly still. Rykov broke the silence. We need to send a probe. Scout the area. No, Van stood. We go ourselves. Jax grinned. Finally, someone says the fun part out loud. The Oblivion's Edge, or what was left of it, wasn't space-worthy. But Earth's last stealth cruiser, the Event Horizon, was waiting on the tarmac, fresh off the assembly line and hungry for a maiden voyage. Nguyen spent the pre-launch hours jury-rigging the comms array. If we're right, we're walking into a nest of those things. I'd like to not be heard screaming. Kara loaded the NAV system with every scrap of data from a Mars outpost. They were tracking something before they vanished. A signal, faint but repeating. Jax cracked his knuckles over the helm. Let's hope it's not a come-eat-me beacon. Vance strapped in. Only one way to find out. The jump to warp was smoother than expected. Too smooth. The Event Horizon cut through the void like a blade, leaving no ripple, no trace. 6 hours in, the stars began changing, not vanishing, not dimming, shifting as if space itself was projection, and something had bumped the lens. Nguyen's monitors flared with warnings. Reality's getting thin here, kids. Then they saw it. A structure, not a ship, not a planet. A construct, floating in the dead zone between galaxies, so vast it defied scale. It wasn't built. It was grown, a lattice of blackened metal, and something disturbingly like bone, pulsing with slow, rhythmic light. And clustered around it, drifting in the dark, were ships. Thousands of them. Every design, every era, some so ancient their hulls had fossilized, others still glowing with residual power. All empty. Kara's breath fogged the screen. It's a collection. Jax's laugh was hollow. Trophies? Nguyen's fingers flew over scans. No sacrifices. She zoomed in on the nearest derelict. A sleek, organic-looking vessel. This one's Veln, and that's a Concord battleship. These are the civilizations the Predators culled, but they didn't destroy them. They brought them here. Vance's skin prickled. For what? The answer came from the Event Horizon's own comms. A voice, human, familiar. The missing Mars outpost director. Asterisk, don't look at it. Don't think about it. It's not a place. It's a stomach. Asterisk, static. Then, asterisk, the universe is alive, and we're the food it's been waiting for. Asterisk, the transmission cut off. The Event Horizon S-proximity alarm screamed. Something was awake. The construct's light pulsed faster. The derelict ships began to rotate, aligning like compass needles toward the cruiser. Jax didn't wait for orders. He slammed the throttle, wrenching the ship into a desperate spiral. We are leaving. Nguyen clung to her console. It's not chasing us. Vance watched the scanners. She was right. The construct didn't move. But something else did. The Veln ship. The Concord battleship. A dozen others. Their engines ignited. Kara's voice broke. They're not empty. The Event Horizon fled. Behind them, the fleet of the dead Asterisk followed.